Mr. Dudgeon,
Hello.
welcome in Prague. I would like to ask you, you are best known for Mr. Barnaby in a very well-known serial, Murder's Midsomeru. You think you will be great detective also in your real life?
No, I think I'd be a terrible detective. Not really, because whenever I read a new script, I'm sort of kind of looking out for whether it's obvious who the murderer is. But in I think maybe 55 scripts I've done, I've guessed who the murderer is once in 55 scripts. And I was quite alarmed then. I was quite worried. So I went straight to the producers and said, "You've got to do something because it's so obvious who the murderer is that even I could spot it." And they said, "No, nobody else has figured it out." And I don't know why it seemed so obvious to me on that one occasion. But no, the other 54 times I've had to get to the last page and then go, oh, it was the vicar. I had no idea. So in that way, I don't think I'd be very good at figuring out who the murderer is. So probably no, probably I wouldn't make a very good detective, I'm afraid.
Where did you take inspiration for your role?
With any role, really, you've just got the script. It's hard to. I mean, the obvious original inspiration, I suppose, is John Nettles, having kind of created the show and the sort of the part that I followed on from, the character I followed on from. But yeah, I don't know that I was inspired by anything else. I suppose there's always you're part of a long history of the genre of the murder mystery detective sort of thing, and there's the ones that I have loved through the years. Like I suppose you've got sort of Miss Marple and Poirot and Columbo and whoever it is. So, but I don't think you consciously take any particular things from any particular detective. I guess it's all just you sort of soak it all in, and then as I started saying, but all you've got with any part really is the script. It's a thing about doing research. It depends what kind of part you're doing, but you can research something loads, but what you end up doing and saying is what's in the script. So you can think, oh, I know all about the background to the history of cheese or something, but I don't say anything about it. I just go, oh, she's been killed with cheese. But all the research about cheese doesn't really... Cheese is on my mind, obviously, because I've been brought a lovely platter of Czech cheeses. Help yourself, there's too much for me. So it's the script, really. You just work and work and work on the script. And I do find... I suppose I've always felt that I've sort of worked as hard as I can on it, and a part of that is I keep going back to the script. I work on the script for hours a day, every day, from when I get it until we've finished shooting it. And every time I go over, even when I know it back to front and I think I know every last detail of it, I go over it again, thinking, oh, I need to go over this again, and I do, and I find something else, and I think, oh, I hadn't realised that. I hadn't thought of that. Oh, that's interesting. So to keep working and working and working away at the script is all you can do, really, I think, or it's all I can do. I'm just very limited. I'm not very bright, so I just keep going back to the script, hoping it will help me, and it does.
What do you think is the magic of the TV series? Because it's very popular, people loves it. You think it's the kind of mystery of the murders, and also people have a fun about who is still living in Midsommar, because there is almost no one now.
Oh, there's a lot of people. Midsommar's a very, very large area with lots and lots of villages. Many people survive. Every episode we kill maybe 2 or 3 people, but there's at least 10 people who don't die. So most people in Midsommar are alive. I'm pleased to tell you. I think other things that people like about the show, I think the countryside is great. Long before I was involved with the show, I loved watching it. So I always have this sort of reference point in my head of myself as an audience who loves the show, and I loved the show because of the countryside, because of the eccentricity of the whole feel of the show, the brilliant guests that we get, and some of the murders are quite inventive and eccentric, and that's very entertaining, I think. So all those things that I enjoyed about the show, that kept me watching the show, I guess are why everybody else carries on watching the show. We have beautiful settings with kind of fun stories, fun, sort of interesting murders, and great guests. So it's a pretty good combination. Also, a great thing, I think, is because the formula of the show is really as simple as something happens in a rural location and two men turn up to investigate. So if you give that to a writer and say, this has got to be 90 minutes long, 2 hours long, two men go to the countryside and find out about a village, now write whatever you want. Well, you've got, it can be about aliens, it can be about cheese, it can be about an auction site, house, it can be, you know, you can just come up with anything and then make your story around that. So a great thing about the show, I think, is it's had so much variety over the years. You kind of know you're watching Midsummer Murders, but every episode is so different. We always have different writers, different directors. You've got largely a different cast for every episode. So I think that variety is also very important, with all the other things that I said, the countryside, the stars, the guest stars, and the bonkers murders.
As you said, you played with many great actors. Who is very close to your heart, or you spent very lovely party or day with?
Well, I don't want to miss anybody out and offend anybody, but I remember my first episode, the guest lead really was a wonderful actor called David Warner, who in the 1960s was kind of famous for his groundbreaking Hamlet. He was this gorgeous, brilliant young actor. So then starting my first Midsomeru and going, but David Warner, it's not a bad start. And then the second episode, the leading actor in that was Edward Fox, who was, I remember I watched him in the original film of Day of the Jackal so many times, and it's such a great film, and he's so brilliant in it. And then there he is. He just sort of came into the read-through looking very dapper and handsome and lovely, and was just so warm and lovely and friendly. So for me, it's always going to be meeting we have loads of great younger actors who I've met who have been brilliant, but for me, I suppose it's the older actors, because I always think the actors who I grew up watching on television, and now I'm on television with them, it's kind of, wow, look, I'm here with them. I'm in the television with Edward Fox. Or, we did an episode with Claire Bloom. And Claire Bloom famously, when she was about 21 or something, she was cast by Charlie Chaplin in one of his last films. And a thing that I've learned is that when I started, I'd try and be a bit cool. So I would think I'll start off just being sort of quite, friendly, but not being pushy with the guest actors. And I'd give it a few days to soften them up. And then as I got to know them better, then I would really quiz them about their careers or who they'd worked with. But I found what happened is, because people come in and they do like 4 or 5 days and then they're gone, and you never know how long they're going to be there for. So I think I'll just play it, softly, and then I'll soften this person up, and then I'll move in for the kill, and I go in and I'll say, where's Claire? Where's Claire today? Is she in? Oh, she finished yesterday. She sends her love, says thank you, and she's gone. I think, no, but I didn't. I never quizzed her. I didn't get in there. So that taught me that as soon as somebody comes in, I've got to say, okay, great. Have we finished rehearsing? Brilliant. Claire, come on, I'll get you a cup of tea. Claire, Charlie Chaplin. How was Charlie Chaplin? What was it like working with Charlie? You were 21 and it was Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton. There's a great scene in, what's it called? Is it Limelight? Lamplight? I can't remember the Charlie Chaplin film. It's a great scene, I think, where she's in a dressing room at a makeup mirror with Chaplin. And I think, if I'm remembering this right, the shot kind of widens out, and that Buster Keaton is sat at the next, and you go, oh my God. So, meeting somebody like Claire and being able to talk to her about what's it like, what was Charlie Chaplin like, what was Buster Keaton like, those kind of people. But there's they stand out, I suppose. But there's been so many people. We had Tom Conti in the last series. You know, I've always loved his work, and he was another great thing about working with those marvelous people as well is you get to do this as I'm doing with you. You sort of sit there with them and you see what they're doing and how they're working, and Tom Conti's a very sort of individualistic actor. He's quite sort of, in his ways, like sort of eccentric, and really keeps you sort of hanging on his every word because he changes how he does it all the time, and he sort of goes in and out of sentences a bit. So I found that very, very interesting. But there's been so many sort of wonderful people who come in, and it's kind of been a constant surprise how many brilliant people come and do Midsomeru. It shouldn't have been. But of course now the older ones, it's getting harder to find the older actors now than it was 15 years ago because, you know, fewer of them, as they've got older, there are fewer of them still alive and fewer of them who are still able to work. And now I'm becoming the old actor. Now it's me. Now I'm the old one. But, well, there we are. Can't do anything about that.
But I guess you will stay in this role for the moment.
I'll stay safe or sane.
Safe in this role.
Safe in the role. I hope I'm safe. Well, as far as I know, I'm safe in the role. People keep asking me about rumours that I'm leaving and that somebody is going to take over. But that's all a lie. That's not. That's just something that a journalist made up in England because they didn't have anything to fill some column inches, so they just made something up about Midsomer Murders. But it's not true, and I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying for as long as I can.
Do you know how many murders did you already solve?
I've done, I don't know how many episodes I've done. I think I've done about 55 episodes or something. There must be an average of 3 an episode, I suppose. So that would be 150, 160 murders, I suppose, something like that.
So you see, it's quite many people.
That's well. Now you see, this is what you do, though. You can say anything with statistics, can't you? It sounds, of course, it sounds a lot when you say, "Oh, 165 people have been murdered." But I mean, if they'd all been murdered on the same afternoon, obviously that would be a massive atrocity. It'd be a massacre. But actually, it's spread out over 15 years. You know, so that's going to be. That's not even a dozen. That's less than one a month. More people die from accidents during filmed interviews probably than, you know, more people die from accidents with cheese platters than die in Midsomer. It's huge. I think it's just because there's the word murder is in the title and they make a big deal out of it. But yeah, Midsomer Life. You do lifestyle sorts of thing. Midsomer Lifestyle. If you call it Midsomer Lifestyle, then it's much more about, you know, people live in nice cottages in the nice countryside, and it's all rather beautiful, rather than constantly talking about murders and death and things.
So you prefer countryside than, for example, living in London?
Well, no, I do miss when we don't film. I do miss being in the countryside, and I really love to get out in the countryside just because it's so the air's clearer and it's, you know, you've got more sky and trees, it's more green and lovely horizons and all that. And I do like all that, and it's a common conversation among the crew members when we're out in some new beautiful village, and they say, "Oh, do you think could you live here? Then would you want to live here?" And I think they're all very beautiful and very nice. I always have this image of myself, if I moved to the countryside, that the first morning after I arrived, I'd get up and I'd go outside my front door and I'd look around and I'd think, what do I do here? Well, I don't know what to do in the countryside other than look at it and go, isn't it great here? And I've been living I grew up in a town and then I've lived in cities ever since. So it's very nice to visit. It's like visiting the seaside. I like to visit the coast, but I don't know whether I'd live there. There's only so much time you can spend going out for walks, I think. Maybe if I moved to the countryside, I'd get a dog, or I'd get some dogs. If I had some dogs and I had to go out for a walk 3 times a day, I'd have to get big dogs that need walking a lot, or who could possibly pull some sort of sledge or something like that. So as I get older, they could take me for a drag through the village. That might be a good way of sorting it out, and then I can see it all going by. But mostly I think I'm a townie. I like all the sort of towny things. And I just like looking. I think another thing I just like really is you sort of walk around a town and you see the buildings and you see the people and the shops, and there's sort of so much. And I think maybe it's just that I don't know the countryside well enough, so that excuse me, that's the cheese. That I can read the city and the town much better than I can read the countryside, because I'm just not really fluent in countryside or something, you know. So I'd just be afraid of what I'd do there without the dogs. Whereas in the town, in the country, you walk around and there's lots of obvious stimulation to me.
I know you have 2 children. Mm-hmm. They are also in love to see Daddy, like Inspektor Barnaby.
They used to be quite keen on it. There was another show that I did. It was actually when they were quite. I'm sorry, I've just suddenly thought of another show that I did when they were much smaller, and in that show, it was a comedy show, and I was married to a woman, and she had 2 kids, and I had a child or something. So we had sort of three kids between us. And when my kids were younger, and that was another show, they'd see that, and they'd become they were a bit kind of confused as to where my other family were, where my other children lived, and when they were going to meet, that sort of thing. Oh, this is a bit weird. No, this is pretend. They're not. I'm not related to any of those people. And eventually they got it, but it seemed as though they'd harboured some sort of worries about these other children that I got hidden away somewhere. It was a documentary of my other life. But yeah, as smaller kids, I think they thought it was a bit of a laugh seeing their dad on the television. But as they've got older, you know, there's a saying that there's nothing so banal as what your father does for a living. So you just kind of get used to it, and you think, you know, it's just sort of, oh, it's just what he does. He dresses up and he wanders around the countryside saying, oh, somebody's been murdered, and yeah, whatever, you know, put some, you know, they want to turn over and put something else on, I suppose.
And they are going in your path? They would love to be actors?
No, they're not particularly interested. My son did a bit at school. My daughter has always said, no, I'm not doing anything like that. I don't want to perform at all. Though she's a wonderful singer, so I don't know whether she might end up singing, possibly, but then she'd have to perform the singing in public, and which is a sort of interesting thing for a performer, I think, is how much you enjoy the thing that you do and how much you enjoy performing the thing that you do. That they're quite different. I think there's loads of people who make perfectly wonderful actors, but who don't really like getting up and doing it in front of people. I always think as well, like, you know, you see golfers at the big championships, and there's crowds of people around them shouting, and they're all quiet, he's going to hit the ball, and they hit the ball, and then, how much you must want to play to that gallery. And I always imagine that there are golfers around the world who go out on their own on the gut, and they hit like 20 under par every round, and they're brilliant golfers, but they can't bear anybody looking at them, so they never sort of do it professionally. Yeah, so I suppose performing, a big part of performing is people look at you, and sometimes you think, oh, I don't want all these people. Will you stop looking at me? It's all too stressful and terrible. So my daughter's a wonderful singer, but she doesn't like performing, so I don't think she'll do that. My son, as I say, did a bit of acting at school, but I think he's moved on from that. And they'll doubtless go on and do other much more impressive and marvellous things than just acting.
There is still some role or some person with who you would like to play?
I've never really had that sort of... I've never really had anything that I particularly wanted to do. I don't know whether I lacked ambition or belief or something. When I left drama school, well, I depends how far you go back. I could never imagine I would get into drama school, and then I got into drama school. And when I left drama school, I thought I'll never get an agent, and then I got an agent, and then I thought, but I'll never get a job, and then I got a job, and and I got another job, and then I kept getting jobs. I suppose I was sort of grateful to get the next job, whatever it was. And partly I wanted somebody else to think, oh, he'd be good at this. I didn't have the whatever it is, confidence or something, to think, oh, I know something I'd be good at. I'd like to do that because I'd be really good at that. I never thought that. In fact, more often people would say, oh, you know, do you want to play this part? And I'd look at it and think, oh, I don't think I'd be very good at that. You know who should get to do that? I'd offer them other people that they should get instead of me, because I could always think of people who do it better than me. And then they get me instead, and then I just end up trying to do it like the person I thought they should have given the job to in the first place. So no, I think always found it hard to believe anybody would give me any sort of part without me start thinking of parts for myself. Sorry.
No, it came to my mind because you spoke about Charlie Chaplin and Buster. So, for example, Rowan Atkinson, I know it's not the same, but he's also playing with this grimace and this kind of playing rhythmic. If it would not be him to play with.
I just sort of think if people came along and said to me, I want you to play Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton or Rowan Atkinson or anything, I'd think, oh, well, okay, yeah, I'll have a go at that. If you think I can, I guess I'll have a go. But I just wouldn't think of it for I've never had, there's plays that I really like that I sort of think I'd like to do, but I suppose in my head I sort of think I'd like to see them done really well. Or when I talk to somebody about an idea for something, sometimes you talk to a producer or a writer and they say, oh, well, if you have an idea, or we've got an idea for this story that you'd be good in, or this would be good for you. And then I always think, well, I don't want it to have to be me. If you end up with a story where you think, you know, somebody else would be really good, but we've got that Neil Dudgeon with us, so we've got to have him doing it. I think get the person who's best for it. And I think get the person who's best for the job, and I would almost never think I'm the best person for the job. So, I don't know, I guess that's... I don't know, I just sort of always think of the whole project and who the best person would be. And I suppose then I think of, I think of actors who I like, or somebody who I think, oh, that person would fit that job, rather than, what about me? I think I'd be very good at it. I can't quite sort of take myself seriously thinking, I'd be terribly good in that part, don't you think? It just doesn't sound very much like me. I think I want to be wanted, or I want to be loved or something, so I want a director or somebody to come to me and go, oh, please do this part, please. And if it's terrible, it won't be your fault, it'll be my fault. I think, oh, okay, if you take responsibility for me being really bad in your show, then I'll do it, I suppose.